Hello, dear students. How are you? So I am Prerna, and with me, you are going to be studying something about the social science chapters that are given in your textbook. Now, first of all, I want to welcome all of you to class 8. Congratulations to all of you that now you've been passed and promoted to the 8th grade. So, well done. Okay. Now, when I talk about the subject social science and the aspects that you study, or the further subjects that you study, so you have history, you have civics, and then you have geography. I see most of you kind of being worried that, oh my God, in history we have such long answers, we have to remember so many dates, we have to remember so many names. So what I want to ask all of you today is, how many of you like listening to stories? All of us, correct? Maybe a few of us also enjoy reading stories, but listening to stories is something that all of us enjoy. Reading, maybe only a few, and the listening part is something that we all enjoy, correct? So from today onwards, what I want all of you to start practicing is that you start treating the subject of history as his story. His story. Okay? Or high story, something like that. And why I say this is because history is just about someone's story only, about a place, about a person, about a kingdom, about a country. It is just a collection of some stories. Now, coming to your other concern, which is regarding dates and names. So tell me one thing. Don't you remember the name of the characters when you study a story in any story in your English chapter? You do, correct? Talking about dates. So don't you learn the formulas or the equations that are given in your maths and science subject? So this is the beauty of social science subject, that it is a combination of all the other subjects that you study. So what I personally feel is that in this subject, you all should be excellent because you studied English. So you know the importance of remembering names of characters. You've studied science, so you know the formulas, and maths also you know the formulas or the equations. So you understand the importance of numbers in this. So in social science, in fact, it is actually the easiest subject, because you just have to practice, or you just have to implement what you are doing in other subjects. So as I told you, what you need to start practicing from today is start teaching the history section of your textbook as a collection of some stories which has some character names and some numbers in the form of dates and years involved in it. All right, great. So today from your textbooks, we are going to be reading chapter number 1, wherein we are going to be reading story about our own country, about India. And which era are we going to talk about? We are going to talk about India in the 18th century. Correct? So first of all, I want all of you to quickly open your textbooks to chapter number 1. Okay, so chapter number 1, the name of the chapter is India in the 18th century. This is the name of the chapter. And in every chapter, even in your previous classes, you would have seen that there's a heading of lesson focus, in which the key topics that you're going to learn in this chapter, or you want to understand in the chapter, are given. So in this chapter, we are going to first talk about decline of the Mughal Empire. So in your previous classes in 7th grade, you have studied about the Mughal Empire. Babur, Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb, like this. So you have studied all about these rulers. But we all know that after Aurangzeb, in your previous class, you have studied that after Aurangzeb, there wasn't really a strong successor. And of course, there were a lot of conflicts that were going on that led to the decline of the Mughal Empire. So in today's class, we're going to study something more about these reasons. Then we are also going to talk about the rise of independent or regional kingdoms. So, sorry, we are going to talk about like the Marathas, the Peshwas, the Rajputs, the Sikhs, so various other independent kingdoms that started emerging in India in the 18th century. So, ready to hear the story? Okay, so let us start reading this story. Once. So, here we go. All right. So first is the decline, causes for the decline of the Mughal Empire. So these are the 6 main reasons for the decline of the Mughal Empire. Wrong policies of Aurangzeb. So we know that Aurangzeb was someone who did not have a very secular and a very open or a very kind or a compassionate attitude towards his subjects. Correct? So he had a lot of wrong policies about which people were not happy. Disunited nobility. So within the nobility, there were a lot of conflicts going on. Failure of the Mansabdari system. We're going to understand this. Then wars of succession. That is, after Aurangzeb, a lot of like his successors, there were always a fight between them, a war between them. Then weak and inefficient successors. We know that. And then invasion of Nadir Shah and Ahmad Shah Abdali. So now we are going to read about these reasons, correct? So coming back to your textbook. So I want all of you to be on page 1 of your textbook. So now the first reason, it says wrong policies of Aurangzeb. So if you would have, I'm sure you remember that in class 7th, we started the kind of policies that Aurangzeb had. So under Aurangzeb, the Mughal Empire covered almost the entire Indian subcontinent, but his wrong policies and his wars for expansion in the Deccan adversely affected the administration of the large empire. So his policies, his administration was such that, his wars and his policy was such that it negatively impacted the empire. And unlike his predecessors, that is before Aurangzeb, they did not follow Aurangzeb did not follow the policy of religious tolerance. That is, Aurangzeb was not open to the non-Muslims. So there was a higher taxes that the non-Muslims had to pay. There were some also people who were willing to convert to Islam were favored. So there was a lot of discrimination on the basis of religion. Then this, of course, really annoyed the Rajputs. And a section of the Rajputs fought with him over Marwar succession. By fighting with the Rajputs, Aurangzeb could not seek their help in the battles against the Marathas. So this is about wars of succession. Oh, sorry, this is about the wars that he had with the other kingdoms, independent kingdoms. Then disunited nobility. So a steady decline in the authority of the Mughal Empire caused a struggle for power among the nobles in the Mughal court. The nobles were divided into 4 groups. Okay, what were these 4 groups? So Hindustanis, Turanis, Iranis, and Afghans. Later Mughals failed to keep a check on their power-hungry nobles. Such nobles undermined the authority of the emperor. So these nobles, because they were divided into 4 groups, what happened? The later Mughals, they were not really able to please all the groups and keep them united. So these groups, there was a kind of a war between them in terms of who was the most superior group, who was the most superior group in the nobility. Then failure of Mansabdari system. So we know that Aurangzeb had appointed the highest number of Mansabdars due to large expansion of his empire. However, the unavailability of adequate number of Jagirs and a scramble for lucrative Jagirs resulted in the Mansabdari crisis. Many Mansabdars, they failed to get profitable Jagirs. So finally what happened? That there was a huge decline in the royal treasury, because Mansabdari was a huge source of income for the royal treasury. Then wars of succession. So the death of Mughal emperor was mostly followed by wars of succession among various claimants to the throne. So these wars, it created instability in the empire and caused a great loss of both men as well as material. That is, there was human loss and there was materialistic loss as well. And of course, this loss also weakened the empire. Then inefficient and pleasure-seeking successors. So we know that Aurangzeb did not have a very strong successors. They were not as good military commander, or they were not someone who were able to take care of the administration in the manner Aurangzeb was. Then last, invasion of Nadir Shah and Ahmad Shah Abdali. So the ruler of Iran, Nadir Shah, and the ruler of Afghanistan, Ahmad Shah Abdali, they hastened the fall of the Mughal Empire by their invasion. So through their invasion, the fall of the Mughal Empire came really quick. Nadir Shah, he invaded India in 1739 during the rule of Muhammad Shah. He defeated Mughal army, and then this inflicted a blow to the power and prestige of the Mughals. And Nadir Shah returned to Iran with a huge booty, with a huge amount of wealth, which included Shahjahan's peacock throne and the Kohinoor diamond. And Ahmad Shah Abdali, he raided India many times between 1757 to 61. Almost like in 4 years, he raided India with many times, and he was able to get a lot of, or extract a lot of wealth from India. So all these factors gradually led to the decline of the Mughal Empire. Okay, now moving to the next part of the story. Okay, now we talk about the emergence of the independent kingdoms in the 18th century. So first we're going to talk about Marathas. So Marathas, they emerged as strong contenders of the declining Mughals. Shahu was arrested by Aurangzeb and released by Bahadur Shah I, who was Aurangzeb's son. After Shahu's release, his aunt Tarabai, the caretaker of the Maratha kingdom, refused to accept him as the Maratha ruler. So what happened? Now this lady, she set up a parallel kingdom at Kolhapur, while Shahu, he ruled from Satara. And Shahu, soon he emerged as the undisputed Maratha king with the assistance of Balaji Vishwanath, who was later appointed as the Peshwa. Now we talk about the Peshwas. So Peshwas, who exactly were the Peshwas? They were the Brahmin prime minister of the Maratha kings. And gradually they became the hereditary rulers of the Maratha empires, like we have studied in the previous slide. What did they do? They actually transformed the Maratha kingdom into an empire using their skillful political and military leadership. So basically, they had strong political leadership. They knew what are the tricks or what are the tactics of strengthening the political as well as the military system. And then rise of Peshwa, we know it began under the rule of Shahu. His shrewd Peshwa, Balaji Vishwanath, started exercising the power of the king. He helped Sayyid brothers, who were the kingmakers in the Mughal court, in dethroning the Mughal emperor Farrukh Shah. So, as I told you, that they knew how to be in power. Peshwas knew the art of being in power. So, what did they do? They used the people who were there in the Mughal empire against the Mughal emperors only. And during his rule, Marathas were able to regain the lost territory. His is referring to Peshwa, that is Balaji Vishwanath. He also allowed to charge two types of taxes called Chauth and Sardeshmukhi from the farmers in 6 Mughal provinces. So what exactly was Sardeshmukhi? Let's come to that. So you can see these two words, Chauth and Sardeshmukhi. So what is the meaning of these two words? Let's find that out. So you would see that in your textbook, the word meanings are given at the end of the chapter. All right. So let us find out the meaning of these two terms. So Chauth is a land tax equaling 1/4. So Chauth coming from the word number 4. So equaling to 1/4 of the land tax in areas not ruled by the Marathas. And Sardeshmukhi, it was an additional 10% land tax charged by the Marathas. So this happened with the help of the Peshwa. All right. Now we talk about Bajirao I. We're talking about Marathas, so we need to talk about him. So he is credited with transforming the Maratha kingdom into an empire. He led the Marathas in many battles and conquered parts of Gujarat and Bundelkhand and the whole of Malwa. He forced the Nizam of Hyderabad to grant tax collection rights to the Marathas in some Deccan provinces. And he also created a Maratha confederacy by dividing the Maratha Empire into different regions. The regions were placed under the autonomous rule of chiefs of prominent Maratha families. What were these prominent Maratha families? Scindias, Holkars, Bhosles, and Gaikwads. And the Peshwa were the head of the Maratha confederacy. So the main idea of dividing the empire into further units or regions was efficient administration, because a ruler cannot probably look at so many regions, at so many units. So what he did, that he divided the kingdom into certain regions so that proper or efficient administration can be carried out. Imagine the Prime Minister looking at each and every state, the problems of each and every state, the economy of each and every state. Is that possible? No. That's why we are divided into several states, and each state has a chief minister. Okay. Now, Bengal. So, among the first provinces that broke away from the declining Mughal Empire, that was Bengal. Its Mughal Emperor Murshid Quli Khan asserted his independence by renaming his capital city Maqsadabad as Murshidabad after himself in 1770. Murshid Quli Khan is called the first independent Nawab of Bengal. He provided an efficient administration, and his land reforms and help to farmers boosted agriculture. The successors of Murshid Quli Khan continued his good administration and transformed Bengal into a prosperous kingdom. So Murshid Quli Khan was someone who was, he was a Mughal ruler, but then he was a people's king. He looked after the welfare of the state. But the later Nawabs of Bengal, what happened to them? They fell prey to the schemes of the foreign traders, particularly the British, who wanted to establish their direct rule in India. We are going to study about this in the subsequent chapters. The ruler of the last independent Nawab declined with the defeat of Nawab Siraj-ud-Daulah by the East India Company in the Battle of Plassey, which was therein the battle which happened in 1757. Now we talk about the Sikhs. So the Sikhs, they rose against the religious intolerance of the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb. You've studied about this in class 7. So the fifth Guru, Tegh Bahadur Ji, he was arrested and executed by Aurangzeb for protesting the forcible conversion of Hindus to Islam. To fight the Mughals, the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, he formed a military order called Khalsa, and gradually the Sikhs organized themselves into warrior groups called Mithils. The head of the Mithil was the Mithildar, and towards the end of the 18th century, Ranjit Singh, he was the head of the Suke Chakia Mithil. And he brought all the Mithildars on the western side of the Satluj river under his control, and he also unified the regions under their control to form the Sikh kingdom. So we know the entire Punjab area. And then he became the first Sikh Maharaja. His capital was Lahore, and Ranjit Singh was also called as Sher-e Punjab, and he was a brilliant commander and an able statesman. Now we talk about the Rajputs. So after Aurangzeb's death, Rajput states too wanted to break free from the Mughal control. So among the Rajput rulers, Jai Singh of Amber strengthened his power, and he succeeded in capturing some Mughal and Rajput lands. But unlike the Marathas and the Sikhs, who emerged as formidable forces, the Rajput rulers, they somewhere failed to carve out a big united empire. Now we're going to talk about these three places, Awadh, Mysore, and Hyderabad. All right. So let's come back to our textbook. Okay. So we need to study about these. Okay, so the Awadh province of the Mughal Empire, it constituted most of the present-day Uttar Pradesh. In 1722, Sadat Khan, he became the governor of Awadh under the Mughals. However, taking advantage of the Mughal decline, Sadat Khan, he became an independent ruler, and he paid nominal allegiance to the Mughals. Now we know that Awadh, it was a very it had a very fertile land because of the Ganga, Yamuna, Doab, and the region was very rich in agriculture. So the early Nawabs of Awadh, they ruled efficiently and made the kingdom prosperous. But the later Nawabs, they fell prey of the British conspiracy, and gradually Awadh was passed into the hands of the British. Talking about Hyderabad, so in 1724, Kamaruddin Khan, Asaf Jah I, who was the Mughal emperor or Nizamul Mulk of Hyderabad, he declared his independence from the Mughal Empire. So he said that I'm not going to be a part of the Mughal Empire, and he founded the Asaf Jahi dynasty, whose rulers were called Nizams of Hyderabad. And during his rule, what was there in Hyderabad? He was defeated by the Marathas, and he had to accept their condition. So successors of Nizam, they became part of the rivalry between the British and the French forces in India, and they supported either of them depending on who served their interests better. But later on, the Nizams of Hyderabad, even they accepted the British sovereignty, that is their rule. And in British India, Hyderabad was the largest princely state. Talking about Mysore, so it emerged as a powerful kingdom in South India for about 40 years. See, the time period is given 761 to 1799. So almost for 40 years, the two rulers of Mysore, we have heard their name, Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan. They fought against the Marathas, the Nizam of Hyderabad, and the British to safeguard their independence. So we have all heard of Tipu Sultan and his acts of bravery. So Hyder Ali, he was one of the ablest personalities in Indian history. Though illiterate, he was highly efficient in managing state affairs. So he was not at all, he was actually an illiterate, but then he had a very sharp mind. And of course, he was tolerant towards all religions. In military affairs, he was an excellent organizer of strategy and tactics. Then he died in 1782 and was succeeded by his son, Tipu Sultan, who is also known as the Tiger of Mysore. Correct? So Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan fought 4 wars with the British and their allies. That was the Marathas and the Nizam of Hyderabad. And these wars were called as Anglo-Mysore Wars. So in the first 2 wars, Anglo-Mysore Wars, Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan, they repulsed the British attack and succeeded in expanding their kingdom. But Tipu, then he suffered defeats in the 3rd and the 4th Anglo-Mysore Wars. So first 2 Anglo-Mysore Wars were favorable for Tipu Sultan, but the last 2 were not favorable. And he laid down his life defending his kingdom defending his kingdom, Seringapatam, from the British in the 4th Anglo-Mysore War in 1799. And we know that Tipu Sultan, he was a very patriotic ruler who spent his life defending his kingdom against the English East India Company. And despite his never-ending struggle with the English, yet he ran an efficient government and looked after the welfare of the people. So again, he was a people's king. All right. Now, we're going to talk about some other kingdoms as independent kingdoms as well. So we talk about the Jats. So in the early 17th century, the Jat farmers who were living around Delhi and Mathura, they were ill-treated by the Mughals. After initial defeats, the Jats succeeded in bringing a large territory under their control, and they formed the Jat kingdom of Bharatpur. Deeg was the capital of this kingdom, and Maharaja Surajmal, he was an illustrious Jat ruler. Okay. So this all information is given regarding the Jats as independent rulers. So I hope all of you have enjoyed the story of the various independent kingdoms that emerged in India in the 18th century, and of course the story of the decline of the Mughal Empire. Now, what are we going to do? So, ma'am has also explained certain things, that the facts given in our book also. So, starting from today itself, after watching this video, you are going to read the chapter again. Okay, and then you're going to watch the video again. Then I want all of you to prepare notes of whatever you remember. So, what you will do is you will open your textbook, okay, and then you will read the topic, and whatever you remember about the topic, make notes on that, self-penned notes, okay. And then come to the questions and see how many questions can you answer correctly. Now, what's going to happen once you do this practice for, let's say, 2 to 3 chapters or maximum 4 chapters? By the time you're on the 5th chapter, maximum the 6th chapter, you will be able to understand and remember all the information or most of the information that is given in the chapter, which will help you in securing good marks. Okay, so don't be scared of this subject. Enjoy reading it. I will see you all in the next class. Till then, bye bye, my dear students.